Everybody, welcome back to another video. There was one product I saw at NAMM that was recently announced by the wonderful folks over at Revv Amplification, and I was pretty excited about this product. Everybody knows that I'm a hardcore Helix, Line 6 Helix user, but this seemed like a really cool kind of in-between hybrid product that's kind of borrowing, you know, the old school and the new school sort of digital modeling, speaker IRs, virtual cabinets, but integrated with a real deal tube preamp, power amp head, small lunchbox head. And the product I'm talking about is this here. It is the new Revv G20. Little tiny amp, lunchbox style head, weighing in around 9 pounds. This is just unbelievable. I just got my hands on this yesterday. I've been really excited about it. Thanks to the folks over at Revv and WB Gear for getting me set up with this so I could show you guys what it's all about. I'm gonna be doing some videos with this also. This will just be an overview of some of the really cool things I find about this product, but I will be doing some more videos in the future of how this can actually be a really amazing product to integrate with something like the Line 6 Helix or the HX Stomp, you know, 4-cable method, into just a hybrid system. So there's some very interesting things. Also how this could possibly work with something like a Line 6 power cab. So look out for some more videos integrating this into existing systems that we already have for some really interesting possibilities. So I hope you guys are going to enjoy this. So really well built, as Revv is, you know, become known for. Great quality construction. Like I said, nothing to hold this in one hand. Amazing stuff. So let's do this. Let's take a close-up look at sort of the front and back panel. Quickly go over what those controls are going to do. And then from there, what I want to actually do is take us over to the computer into the 2Notes Torpedo remote software that integrates with this, which really gives the G20 an immense amount of flexibility. Not even just as sort of a traditional guitar head into a traditional guitar cabinet, but far more than that. Okay, so stick with me. I'm gonna get this set up. I'm gonna get a camera on this, and then we'll discuss some of the features on the front and back panel before we head over to the software. Stay tuned, I'll be right back. All right, so here we are with the front panel of the G20, and we're gonna take a look at the individual controls and kind of what everything does here. I apologize if you can't see this. I've tried to get set up the best I could with a second camera here to show you guys what's going on. I hope this comes out clearly, but just watch along as I point to things. I'm gonna try to keep my hand out of the way so it doesn't impede with what you can see, but let's go through this. Obviously, right over here, we have our input, guitar input, you know, nothing special about that. That's what we're gonna plug our guitar into. Now, right over here, the way that the camera is angled, what we have here is our gain control, okay? So this is going to be the control that controls the amount of gain only on channel 2, all right? And the way that they designed this was to really be usable throughout its full range, right? Not like some amps where if you crank it up all the way, you know, the distortion kind of maybe gets a little bit out of control and a little bit out of hand. This does not do that. The position of it alters the frequency response in the low end and mids as well. So it's a really good notch to be able to experiment and opens up a lot of tonal possibilities. The next three switches here, knobs, are treble, middle, and bass, all right? So that's what we're dealing with there. Pretty typical tone stack. You know, they're going to be interactive with one another. So again, we're gonna experiment around with those. Now, what you might not be able to see, or you can see down here, as I turn these on, are two other little latching switches. One is called the wide switch, and what this does is it's kind of just an overall voicing change which affects the different channels, both channels. Revv says that channel 1 will receive a little bit more push, the highs will get a little chimier and the lows will fatten up. On channel 2, it's going to basically be more of an extension in the low end. So again, it's going to be up to us to kind of use our ears and dial that in the way we want using the wide switch. But it just tends to, as far as Revv says, give it a bit of just a larger sound to it all right? This here is pretty interesting. It's a 4-watt, 20-watt switch, all right? So we can basically switch that to basically drop the wattage down. And it's going to, in the 4 watt setting, as we drive the power amp harder, it's going to give us a little more breakup and a little less headroom. So that might be something you want, or maybe you want a little more clean headroom, and you can set it to the 20 watt setting, which is pretty simple to do. And right here we have our volume control, which is just going to be the general volume into the of the clean channel and how hard we're pushing the power amp section when using it for channel 1 or channel 2. All right, so pretty typical stuff as far as what we would expect of an amplifier. Now up here on the switches we have a channel switch. So if I switch this, red is our overdrive channel 2 and blue is our clean channel. We also have an aggression switch, all right? And this is something that Revv has become known for on their pedals and on their generator series amps, as far as I understand. They're different voicings. So just turned off, it's not really going to affect anything. But when we go through the different settings, which are going to be off to blue, whoops, I have to be on channel 2 for that, sorry. It does, that's another good point. The aggression switch doesn't work on channel 1. So now I switch to channel 2, so it's off to blue to red. So Revv kind of describes this like having 3 channels in one. So what happens as we go through this, it affects the overall gain as well as the frequency response of the gain channel. So they kind of describe it as having, you know, crunch rhythm and lead tones as we can switch through that. So that's pretty interesting stuff. We also have down here a store button. The store button is basically used to set some various parameters that we can recall them differently. So it has to do a lot with the virtual cabinets and MIDI. We won't go into too much detail with that in this, as I just want to give you an overview of kind of the sounds and the tones and what's possible with the Torpedo remote. Another interesting switch here is the pre-post. Now, for most situations, you're going to have that set to off. But using the Torpedo remote, it actually gives us the ability to be able to do power amp modeling. So the Revv G20 comes with 6V6 tubes, but what if we wanted it to sound more like an EL3484 amp? Well, you'll see later when we look at the software we can do that, but the problem being is as we send that out to the Torpedo remote, we are already sending sort of the baked-in 6V6 amp sound of the G20. By switching this to pre, as we've just done, we send only the preamp signal out to the Torpedo remote software. So then we bypass the 6V6 coloration of the actual amp and we use the virtual power amp modeling. So it kind of prevents us from power amping, you know, power tubing more power tubes, right? Sending 6V6 tone into say 6L6 or EL84 or EL34. So we can simply switch that off if we decide to use the power amp modeling within the Torpedo remote software. We have a nice level control here, which is designed to be used for the XLR out on the back, which is a DI'd out, which sends out the tone of the built-in Torpedo cab simulator, virtual cabs, all right? A good note to mention is if we use the normal speaker outputs to a normal speaker cabinet, we don't get any of those goodies. We don't get the built-in reverb, as we're going to discuss. It just goes out to a normal guitar cabinet and acts as a normal amp. But if we use the DI out, XLR DI out, we can adjust this gain level on the front to match whatever we're sending it into. I presently have it set into a IK Multimedia AX-IO, so I set that so that I'm not clipping into that. But whatever we're sending it out to, it gives us flexibility to control that so we're not overloading anything or clipping anything. There's a little clip LED next to it, which is excellent too. We also have a headphone output, a headphone jack, and that headphone output actually will feed our headphones the virtual cabinets and what's coming from the Torpedo remote software, what the settings we have in there. So we get actually practice very silently with this, which is excellent. Now the virtual cabinet rotary 6-position switch here is so that we can store different cabinets or IRs in there and have them recalled as we desire. They come preloaded with a few Revv branded virtual cabinets, which as I'll show in the software later, okay? So that's a really cool feature. We can switch between those. We have our standby switch and our on-off, so pretty simple stuff there. Let's flip this around and take a look at the back panel. Now, as you can see, I have my XLR out's already plugged in. But now, basically, if we go from this side over here, we have a fuse, we have cabinet lighting, from which, from what I understand, is if you're using a Revv cabinet that has lighting built in, we can power the lighting and have the cabinet light up in a very cool looking fashion. We have a MIDI in, which is really fascinating because we can take something like, I have a Morningstar MC6. I love the folks from Morningstar who make, I believe, the best MIDI controllers, and we could easily program it to control many, many functions and recall many of the functions in the Revv. And in the manual, it gives all of the pertinent details of CC numbers and all the control change numbers that we need to be able to do that. Down here we have bias testing, so that if we're going to change our tubes, we can actually bias this pretty simply. And again, in the manual, there is good instruction on how to do that. We have a USB out, which is going to be used to hook up to the Torpedo remote software. Integrated into this is a Torpedo 2 notes. As you can see here, it says 2 notes audio engineering. It's embedded in there, the Torpedo, to give us this virtual cabinet simulation. There's a ground lift switch, right, in or out, so that's gonna be good. Now we have the balanced output, which I have plugged in, like I mentioned already, to my IK Multimedia Axe I/O, and works great. And the level of that is controlled by the little knob on the front. This is for the proprietary Revv foot switch, which some folks may want to get, or other folks may want to go the MIDI route, but either way, there is a foot switch available. We also have an effects return and send, so a great effects loop, which I will be using in the future with the Helix to integrate in with this to see what we can do. And a lot of folks have asked me to do some videos using the Helix with a real amp, and that's what this amp's going to allow me to do. And then here's our normal speaker output with our 4 and 8 ohm settings, depending on what cabinet we're hooked up to. And then over here is very important. We have this pushed in right now as an internal load. So this is a normal tube guitar amp head. It needs a load on it, right? So this has a reactive load built into it, which is very, very useful. We don't have to have a guitar cabinet hooked up to it. So if you do though, you would just simply switch that over to speaker. When you don't have a speaker hooked up to it, keep it on internal load and all is good. So there's all of our controls. I hope I was clear about what everything does, but I think a lot of it is self-explanatory. So now let's move over to the software and see what we can get going and some of the really cool features of the Revv G20. All right, so here we are back. We want to go over to the computer now and take a look at the software that is included, that integrates with the Revv G20, and this is the Torpedo remote software. Very attractive piece of software and very useful. So let's go through some of the features of it. Up here we have our presets which we can open and close. If you notice here, I made a preset called Devil's Child. And the reason is I did a performance video like this. As folks who watch my Helix videos know, I really enjoy doing performance videos for every tone I create. So I was going through some backing tracks that I had, and I've always been a big Judas Priest fan. I thought, man, I love the tone on Devil's Child from the Screaming for Vengeance album. And I thought, let's use this, not to recreate that tone or even try to come close to it, which would be very difficult. I don't have any idea what they used on that, and I don't really care. But I wanted to get a good sounding tone from the Revv, record it direct, so I did that. So right now there's a performance video up. Please go check it out on my channel, and you'll get to hear the G20 being used on all the guitar tracks in there, rhythms, leads, and it was no post-processing done. I dialed that sound in using the reverb that's built into this, the cabinets that are built into it, and although I think I did use a cabinet that I had purchased a long time ago from 2 Notes. And that's the other thing, you can purchase extra cabinets and just have as many as you want here, other than just the included ones that come with it. We'll just go through the included ones for today though. So you can take a listen to that. The only thing I did is I used Line 6 Helix Native for a little tiny touch of delay on just the solo. So that's the only thing you're hearing because there's no delay built into this and I wanted a little bit of delay on it. So wonderful stuff. So we can pick our presets, save our presets. We can choose the cabinets we want. You can see the ones here. I have some here, I believe, that aren't included that I had purchased in the past. But the Revv ones are included, as you'll see as we go through this, all right? We can save those. Here's the simulation room, and we can choose the cabinets that we currently have loaded up, right? I can also just control this when I turn the knob on the front of the amp. This goes back to what those settings are set at by default, all right? So this is pretty cool. We have the ability to move the microphones around, as we'll look at in a minute. We also just have an IR loader. So you can actually select IRs from your computer. You select a directory, and any IRs that you have, you can use those. If you have some special IRs you really like, you know, from Onham or Celestion or whoever else, you know, Live Ready Sound or some other nice ones, you can actually just load them in here and use them with your Revv G20. Cabinet Manager, I haven't really looked into this. It says drop your cabinet from the left panel here. So I'm imagining as you get more 2 notes cabinets, you can just load them up here. You have a preset manager, much like a lot of other software would. Again, I'm not really getting into that right now. And an IR manager as well, where you can kind of, I guess, search for different IRs. So let's go back to the simulation though for now and see what we have. Well, let's do this. Let's just start with the setting on the Revv amp at the first virtual cabinet selection. I'm just going to get a guitar on here so we can make some noise and hear what's actually going on. So right now, I'm going to just keep it on this first, you can see here it says it's a Revv 412 closed back. It's a balanced monster of full, well-rounded tone. It gives you a nice little selection. Available microphones, condenser 87, condenser S5E, Royer Ribbon 121, dynamic 420, dynamic 57. So a lot of choices which we're going to be able to choose from over here. But let's do this. Let's go back and we'll just change the channel. Now, as you noticed, as I change the channel, you can also have it programmed to change to different settings. So I'll back to this. I've played around with this a bit, so it is jumping between some of the settings that I've put in. But here is kind of what I believe is the stock setting. So let's take a listen to what channel 1 sounds like. I have all the settings basically flat. Gain does nothing. We have our treble, mid, bass, and we have our volume cranked up. Now I can get a little more signal going in here by using the level output. That's clipping, so I want to bring that back a bit. So you can kind of hear there's a little bit of edge of breakup. What about P90 on the neck? Split coil on the bridge. Okay, so nice tones there. If we roll this back a bit, just not pushing the power amp so hard. Bring my level control up a bit. Now, like I said, we have the wide switch. Let's see what that does. So as the manual said, it kind of gives it a little more push. Now what happens if we have the wide switch on when we crank up the volume? I want to get that out of clipping. Wide switch off. Pretty much exactly as it is described to us. So really nice stuff. Excellent, excellent stuff. Okay, so what happens if we switch over? I'm going to bring the channel over to our distorted channel now and see what happens. I'm also going to just reset this back to sort of whatever is stock here. Okay, so that's with the gain control off. Happens when we bring that gain control up to say half. Remember, I'm not touching anything else here. We'll get into the software in a second, but I just want to sort of show you what some of the settings are like in this. Let's crank this up. Let's see what the treble knob does on this. Bring that all the way down. Put that back in the middle. Let's see what the mid knob does. Turn that all the way down. Crank it all the way up. And we'll do the bass now. And crank that all the way up. Probably do something like these scooped mids. All right, let's just go back to those being flat. Just sort of see that there is some nice flexibility among just the tone stack. But let's see what the aggression does. And actually, let's do this too. Let's do the wide. Let's actually do this. I'm going to crank some of the treble up and bring the bass down. Wide switch. Wide switch off. Subtle difference, but there is a little bit of a difference there. So aggression now, let's see what that does. So this is off. Okay, so we really do see the difference here. So we can see the difference in sound there. All right, so let's do this. Let's keep the settings there, and now let's go over to the software. Oh, the one other setting I wanted to look at was the 4 to 20 watt switch. So here it is set on 4 watts. Now you'd obviously have to bring your gain up. Bring that gain down a bit and turn that off, back to 20 watts. So another really cool, flexible possibility there. Let's leave the settings on the amp like that, and we'll come back over to the software. Take a look at what we have here. Okay, so let's go through, as I was showing you some of the settings before, but now what I can do is, like I was mentioning before, I can use the power amp modeling and change the types of tubes. As I mentioned, the G20 comes with 6V6 tubes, but if I push my pre and post button, now I have change it so that it's simply feeding into the Torpedo remote software now, just the preamp stage of the G20. I can turn on the power amp modeling, and you're going to hear a total difference in sound here. So let's do this. Let's turn that off first. I'll turn off the pre over here. Here's the sound again before we model the power amp. Okay, turn this on, turn the pre-post on. Now we're going to be getting the sound of EL34 tubes. Let's change that up to 6L6s. EL84s. A little thinner sound. Okay, let's go over to KT88s. Let's go to 6L6s again. So we can see we have a lot of possibilities here with the power amp modeling. Let's turn that off and just go back to just the 6V6 tubes that we have in the G20. Nice thing too is we have an EQ we can turn on and off. And this is very, very flexible. There's a guitar, there's a bass setting, so it changes the frequencies we're going to use. And then there's custom, so that we can, if I can get over there, have a lot more flexibility. We have a sort of a low cut that we can put in. Very useful stuff. We have different settings for the EQ that we can put in here. We could, you know, if I wanted this to be a 200, and then I could, it's going up to 199. Not sure why. Then we can boost the gain of that if we so desired, right? I'm going to bring that back down. You know, I could go into here and say, one of my favorite things to do is go around 400. I don't know why that's not 450. There we go. And just bring the gain down on that a little bit. Probably a little bit too much. Or we could just go with the set guitar frequencies that they gave us and said, okay, here's 360. I want to bring that down a touch. Maybe add a little tiny bit of 6K and 2K, a little bit 800, maybe pull back 120 a bit. A little bit muddy. And that kind of cleans it up a little bit. So interesting stuff. We don't have to use EQ, but we can. And this can all be controlled via MIDI as far as I understand as well. Now this is one of my favorites, is the reverb. We can turn the reverb on and choose from different studio rooms and the dry and wet. So I'm going to turn this up fairly wet so we can hear the different sounds of the studio rooms. So what you were hearing up to there is the dry sound. Here's the wet sound now. Okay, we'll go to Studio B. We can go even wetter than that. Turn it off. So those are more subtle room type effects, little studio type effects. Basement. A lot of times, as I mentioned in a lot of my Helix videos, you know, direct recording, it's going to sound very dry, so we probably do want some sort of reverb or ambience on it. So this is a beautiful thing to have built in. We have all this reverb built in. They have a loft. Obviously, that's a lot. We would bring that dry, wet way back. you know, even more than that, possibly, right? But it just adds a little dimension to the sound. All right, so nice stuff there. We can also go to Hall A. I'm going to turn this up just so we can really hear the effect. Hall B. Nice reverb sounds, very, very nice. Crypt. Let's turn that up. And finally, Cathedral. Obviously, way too much of that. Bring that way back. Maybe not so much for distorted tones, but on some clean tones, it would probably be quite nice. Or even just a little tiny bit of this, you know? And there you have it, right? So that's our reverb. So, you know, even just something like maybe the Studio B, or let's see, maybe, there's one I was really liking here. Was it maybe Hall A? Let's leave that on, dry it up a bit. Okay, so what about the microphones now? Well, they give us a really wonderful little mixer here, which gives us a lot of possibilities, which is very, very cool. We can switch from controlling the graphic over here, mic A, and we can move it around. You can see this, we can pull it back into the virtual room, on axis, off axis, push, pulled back, switch over to mic B, and now this is a ribbon mic, right? And we see which mics we're using here. We have basically a Shure SM57 for mic A and a Royer 121 for mic B. We can also mic the back of the cabinet if we wanted to, and it shows us the back of the cabinet if we switch over. Very cool stuff. We can make all those moves over here too. Distance and on and off axis can be controlled right from the mixer, and then we can blend the two. So let's do this. Let's mute the ribbon mic and let's listen to what just the SM57 mic sounds like. Let's move that right up. Let's turn the reverb off and just hear that. So I've pulled the 57 way back, but I actually want that right up close and maybe slightly off axis. Listen to what moving it on and off axis does. Right back on axis. Okay, let's see what happens when we mic the back. Closed back cabinet, so it gets kind of a funny tone to it. Maybe that's what you want, right? That's kind of cool to have the option. Okay, let's mute that and let's go to the ribbon mic. Again, what happens if we go off axis with that? Pull the distance back. So we have a lot of possibilities. We can mic the back again. You know, some of those aren't going to be too useful. But what's nice about this now is I could turn both of these on. I could say, well, I want a little bit more of, you know, a slightly pulled back ribbon mic that's just a little bit off axis. And then I'm going to blend in with that basically right on the cone up front, on axis SM57. Even gives us the ability to flip the phase on these, if we felt the need to. Obviously it's not needed there. But I could also then pull the 57 back in the mix. Or go with the 57 as a predominant and pull the Royer back. So lots of possibilities, and really thinking studio-minded, it gives us crazy number of possibilities. Now I have some other cabs in here. What happens if we go over to our amp and just flip through the different settings? Well, we have this, and then we have a wet version of it. Okay, still a Revv 412. If we go to virtual cabinet position 3, we're down to a Revv 212 now. This is the dry setting. Go to the next position, again 212 but now wet. Next position, we go to a Revv 112. And the next is that same configuration, I believe, but wet now with a little bit of verb. So lots of possibilities. And like I said, I made a setting here that I call Devil's Child, which was a cab I believe that I had purchased off of Two Notes a long time ago. Brit Vint C, so vintage 30 loaded Marshall 1960 cab with these settings here, and I believe this is what I used. Doesn't seem right though. Something got changed here in my fiddling around because I believe I had a ribbon and a 57 if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, that's not what I actually use. But again, it just shows you what is possible and what this is capable of. Really, really amazing stuff. And we can save these and recall them via MIDI, via our front panel, via foot switch. Very useful amp. And I really think the tones in here are amazing. I'm sorry I wasn't able to, I don't want this video to go on for 4 hours, but there's a lot of possibilities here. And I hope I gave a good overview of what it's capable of and some of the tones so you could hear it. But what a great little system. And I think it's going to be a really cool thing to integrate as a hybrid into a hybrid system using something like the Line 6 Helix or the HX Stomp in 4-cable method. To be able to even use the Line 6 Helix to control this and get really endless possibilities for those folks who want to have the best of both worlds with some digital modeling and the ability to bring a tube amp in. The Revv folks knocked it out of the park here. This is a fabulous sounding amp. So go give the performance video a listen. Like I said, I used the Revv G20 straight into my audio interface, the IK Multimedia Axe.io. Playing around with the settings here. I did no post-production on it, no post-processing, just what you hear. I added, like I said, I added a little bit of delay using Helix Native, Line 6 Helix Native, just in the guitar solo. Everything else, all the reverbs, EQ, everything, no compression, just this straight in. And you get to hear it in a mix. So I hope you guys like it. I thought that would be a cool thing to do. And I hope that gives you a quick overview. But anybody who's interested in this type of thing, I believe street price on this is $12.99 US. Very reasonable price for what you're getting. It's a great amp, and I tip my hat to the folks at Revv, fellow Canadians up here, for making such amazing products for those folks who want to get themselves a tube amp like this in such a small format that's so flexible. I hope I answered everything right. I hope it was accurate about everything. Thank you guys for tuning in so much. Please like the video, share it if you don't mind. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and click the little notification bell so you can see when I put new videos out. I'll be back very soon with some more content, and we'll see you then. Ciao for now.